Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Welcome to the 17th episode in this long-running series on the channel.
You are most kind to say so.
But if you're new around here, Hidden Gems or Trash is a series of videos where I cover various obscure RPGs, action adventures, and similar games. You can check out previous videos by clicking on the playlist I will add here. It's the easiest way to catch up with the series. However, pretty much every episode is a great starting point, so you can just continue with this one. By the way, the history of this series and similar videos on the channel has over 100 games, which is kind of insane. And speaking of history, Heroes of History, the sponsor of this video, features a variety of historical and mythological characters. Einstein, Cleopatra, Leonidas, Tesla, and many other historical characters are waiting for you in this strategic city-building mobile RPG. You will progress through historical eras with civilization-style mechanics, summon heroes and build a legendary squad. Master synergy with hero classes, relics, equipment, and upgrades to win tough battles. There are more than 5 PvP modes, arenas, and alliance-based treasure hunts. Heroes of History launched late last year and is still a fresh strategic mobile RPG worth exploring. Now is the perfect time to try out the game because there is a special first anniversary in-game event where you participate in lots of activities and earn rewards. You must unlock the Prosperity technology at the very end of Bronze Age to participate in the newest season. The first anniversary event will feature a returning powerful heroes from previous seasons, and there will be an anniversary gift that all players can collect for free. Speaking of free stuff, make sure to use the special promo code 1YearStart to get 1 legendary antimatter plus pack of food and scrolls for free. Download Heroes of History using my link or the QR code you see on the screen and support the channel. The promotional code 1YearStart will be available only from September 21st to October 31st. Number 5. Darkstone.
Take this double-handed sword and confront these sickly trolls!
Darkstone, or Darkstone Evil Reigns, as it was called in North America, is an action role-playing game that originally came out in 1999 on PC. It also got a PlayStation 1 release a couple of years after that, and it also got released on Android and iOS devices in 2014. Interestingly enough, all of these versions of the game look different. While I was playing the game on my PC, I had no idea the PlayStation 1 port looks so different, and I was very surprised to learn that the game also came out on mobile devices in 2014. I tried getting the mobile game to work, but I can't find it on Google Play Store. Apparently, the game is only available on Amazon Store, and for the life of me I couldn't figure it out how to install it on my phone. I'm not sure about the iOS version though. Nevertheless, I played the PC version that you can get nowadays on GOG or Steam. This game surprised me a little bit with some of its features. For example, all characters you meet in the game are fully voice acted, and the quality of voice acting is pretty good, especially for 1999 standards.
This is Gunther's shop, our blacksmith. Here, you can buy new equipment or sell your old weapons.
You can open up the menu, which shows you the last dialogue interaction you had, and it's also voice acted.
Signs seem to point to it being the work of a giant dragon.
Pretty much all actions in the game have a distinctive voice line, even when you save the game.
Game saved.
Or how about this, you can open up your map, click anywhere you want, and you can sit back and watch your characters go exactly where you clicked. Those are some features from this very old game that I found impressive. Anyway, to go back to the beginning, you start off by choosing your characters. Yeah, you get to choose 2 characters, and I went with a warrior and a thief. Controlling these characters work pretty much the same like in any other ARPG. You click to move and use mouse buttons for basic attacks. You can rotate the camera with arrow keys, which is a bit awkward, but it works okay once you get used to it. You can choose which character to control, while the second character follows you around. You only have a very basic mechanic for controlling the other party member. You can tell him to wait or to follow you, and that's pretty much it. But you can use skills from both characters with the press of a button or by opening a list of spells you learned so far. Moving around in this game feels a bit janky, as well as targeting enemies in a fight. So even though the combat system is very similar to modern action RPGs, it doesn't feel that great. It's not bad or anything, but it's definitely a bit clumsy.
Help!
The tutorial in the city will do a great job of teaching you about basic controls. For example, when you use ranged weapons, you have to hold shift, mouse over the enemy and click the left mouse button to fire. This tutorial will even start getting harder if you hit more than 3 targets in a row. It's pretty cool.
You hit 3 targets in a row. Let's go up a level.
Speaking of cool, you have to return the weapons you used in this practice arena, otherwise you won't be able to leave. I'm ashamed to admit that I was stuck here for about 10 minutes until I figured out I had to do this. You start the game in this little town and shortly after you can explore the first map. The map has a Shadow of War feature, so you have to explore and discover different areas so you can see the map. The game starts so pretty easy, which led me to believe that I will just one-shot everyone. But that was the biggest mistake I made, because this game gets really challenging really fast.
Help! Please, help!
You will have to explore the map and do everything you can before moving on to new areas, otherwise you'll get destroyed. Enemies seem to have fixed levels in all areas, and even the map tells you the level you need for some of these places. I tried ignoring that at first, but I made a horrible mistake. Then I started being more careful and tried to level up as much as possible by visiting areas that I can actually handle. You need to stack up healing potions or learn healing spells, and the game has some light survival mechanics as well. I didn't even play for 15 minutes and my guy was already starving. If you ignore this, your character can die.
I am dying of hunger.
Characters can also be resurrected, and instead of reloading a save, you can restart at the town when you get both of your character's kills. This comes with a big negative progression, because all of your items from the inventory will be gone. So I just prefer to reload a save upon that rather than using this feature. In order to learn new spells and skills, you need to interact with a couple of NPCs in the city. One of the first spells I learned was the city teleport, which you expect to have in a game like this. As I started getting deeper in the game, I got to feel that I made a mistake with my character selection. It seems like the magic spells in this game are plentiful and very useful, so having a mage as one of your characters is a much better idea.
Help!
Putting that aside, you can deposit your gold in the bank, which I found interesting, but I never used it. Interacting with objects can be a bit tricky in this game, because modern games spoiled us with shiny and highlighted objects. But in this game you really have to keep your eyes open, otherwise you can miss a lot of interactable objects and loot. To tell you the truth, I have no idea what the story is even about or the quests I did, because there is no quest log as far as I'm aware. All you have is the menu called History, which just records some previous dialogue you had with NPCs. Again, modern games have spoiled us so much, and I really thought I just don't know how to open the damn quest log.
Help!
When I finally confirmed that this feature doesn't exist, I continued playing the game and it felt oddly satisfying. I mean, all you have to worry about is the exploration and character progression, it's simple as that. Darkstone has a lot of charm to it, even though the graphics are very outdated. You can basically count the pixels on textures, but even so, I think the game manages to create a very nice atmosphere while exploring these maps.
It is here that I met my fate.
But to be honest, I would only recommend trying this game out today if you're a huge fan of ARPGs in general and you never got to play this one. It's nothing special by today's standards, but it has a lot of charm and it's certainly a bit different from what we got used to playing today in the ARPG space. Since the game is on GOG as well, you can also use my affiliate link if you want to buy the game on that platform. Number 4. Testament, the Order of High Human.
Again?
Testament, the Order of High Human is a first-person action adventure with light RPG elements, which came out in 2023 for PC, last-gen and current-gen consoles. This game quickly fell into obscurity after release and it got some mixed reception in general. I was very curious about this game and I really wanted to see why people thought it's very disappointing. It doesn't seem like a bad game at all while watching gameplay clips, and that's because it's not a bad game in general. It's actually aggressively mediocre or slightly below mediocre, I would say. Judging by some reviews I read, I expected a lot worse experience, to be honest. But that only goes to show you that your experience is probably going to be at least somewhat different when you try playing the game for yourself.
Mortals always seek what they most likely can't have.
That goes for all games, not just this one. You never know until you try them out. So what's Testament all about? Well, the story is a jumbled mess and pretty hard to follow. Not to mention the very bad voice acting, especially by the protagonist called Eren.
It's your last chance to turn back, Harva. This time I won't hesitate to cut you down!
Help!
This is a story about his revenge after he was betrayed by his brother called Arwa. They will interact with each other every now and then through some in-game cutscenes with some extremely uninteresting dialogue.
You think light? What's your choice?
Pretty much all dialogue in this game is boring and uninteresting because, like I said before, it's just a jumbled mess. You'll struggle to figure out what these characters are even talking about. There are no cutscenes in the beginning, but the game technically has cutscenes, which are just there to try and confuse you even more with some random information about the lore of the game. Yeah, I didn't like the story that much. How did you guess? So, is the gameplay any good? Well, I'm glad you asked. The first-person action combat starts off very simple, and unfortunately it remains very simple throughout the whole game, pretty much. Even though you have a decent amount of different spells and skills to learn within the progression system, it really doesn't matter. Mainly because the enemy variety in the game is very poor, which makes the whole idea of progression pointless in a way. You can pretty much kill all enemies with the first 2 skills and default attacks. The melee combat works off simple combos that you have to unlock by leveling up. Executing most of these combos is not even worth it because there is a high chance to get hit in the middle of it, so using something simpler makes a lot more sense. I use the charging strong attack along with a simple combo for pushing enemies around, and you can pretty much beat the whole game like this. The melee combat is not terrible, but it's not exactly very good either. It lacks the sense of impact, but it's not the least impactful first-person action combat, although that's not a very high praise. In short, I think it's passable and just decent enough to make me continue playing the game, but this might not be the case with you if you have higher standards. For example, the stealth attack felt horrible and completely weightless, but it's useful. Strong attacks don't feel strong at all, except the fact they deal a lot more damage of course, but the hit feedback is not great. That being said, the combat system is completely functional. It's not broken or anything, and it works as intended. You can parry hits, and the timing for this ability requires a decent amount of awareness. You also have a dash button, but I'm not sure if you have iframes. Getting out of the way is not that hard though, and there is an ability you can learn in the skill tree which makes this move more fun to use. Besides the melee combat with the sword, you also have a bow and magic spells. Using the bow is pretty much essential in certain situations when the game introduces some special mechanics. You also have this special vision mechanic, which then reveals some hidden enemies that need to be killed with a bow. Sometimes you'll have to fight waves of enemies which are protected by these invisible eyes you have to destroy, or you simply need to open a chest that's locked with the same mechanic. I think this works fine in the game, and it adds an interesting twist to the gameplay. What's not so interesting are the long and pointless puzzle rooms, which you'll have to do every time after about 2 or 3 quests. There are some segments of these puzzles which felt interesting, like when the platform starts rotating, that was kinda cool. But in general, these segments felt needlessly long and boring. I wouldn't say they are tedious, because these puzzles are not very hard. The puzzle with mirrors that you have to do every now and then is actually tedious. Casting magic in this game feels okay, although I only had a couple of spells because I focused on sword and bow. The itemization in this game is very light, which means that you won't get to find new weapons, armors or anything like that, which was a bit disappointing. You can find these consumable items, which are like spell scrolls that you need to craft once you have enough currency. I had some fun with these spells and they are actually very useful. There is also a special mechanic which can show you the weaknesses on enemies. This was only remotely useful in boss fights, as most other enemies are weak to headshots. Boss fights start off decent, but the more you progress, the worse they become somehow. For example, the first boss has around 3 or 4 unique mechanics which felt fair, and you have to make sure to utilize all mechanics you learned up to that point. Pretty much every other boss I fought after this one felt worse or more annoying. I didn't finish the game, so maybe the last boss or some in between would be better, but I highly doubt it. Overall, a lot of mechanics feel undercooked in the game, and the gameplay doesn't get any better as you progress.
Of course not.
Even when the game starts introducing new enemies, fighting them feels exactly the same. I really don't see a strong enough reason to recommend trying this game out. It's much better than I expected, but that's hardly a good enough reason to try it out.
This is a very dangerous place for a lonely man like you.
Number 3. Lionheart, Legacy of the Crusader. Lionheart Legacy of the Crusader is a PC ARPG from 2003. I had no idea what to expect here, except those amazing early 2000s RPG aesthetics. I just love the look of these old RPGs, and I actually want to do a video about this topic soon. Anyway, Lionheart has an amazing early game which caught me by surprise. The game takes place in 5088, and it begins in an alternative version of Barcelona. Before that, your character starts as a prisoner who managed to escape with the help of the spirit form. This spirit form is possessing your character, and every now and then you get to interact with it. Apparently some assassins were attacking the prison and they were going to kill you if you didn't manage to escape. Shortly after this you end up in Barcelona, and the game gives you a great freedom of choice. You can join one of 4 different factions that you can find in Barcelona and its vicinity. I decided to join Knight Templars, but you can go with the Inquisition, Knights of Saladin and the Wielders. You'll also find some minor factions in the game that you can either support or try to destroy. When you start exploring the city of Barcelona, you will find out about the war between thieves and the beggars. I love the dialogue options in this game. I thought the writing was pretty good, and you almost always have an important choice to make. You can straight up attack and kill a lot of these NPCs, and having such freedom of choice is very cool. What's also very cool is all the historical characters you're going to meet in this game. Leonardo da Vinci is one of the main characters, but you also meet William Shakespeare, Machiavelli, Miguel de Cervantes, and I'm pretty sure there are more.
Welcome to Barcelona, jewel of the world.
Not only meet them, but do some side quests for them as well. I failed the quest with Machiavelli when a bunch of assassins tried to, assassinate him. But I reloaded the save and did the quest again. Like I said, the choices and consequences are pretty good in this game. As for the main quest, your character discovered that he's a descendant of Richard the Lionheart and he gets some special powers. You will then follow the main story with your desired faction. A rip in the fabric of time introduced magic into this world, and some people think the use of magic is straight up evil, like the Inquisition. It's worth mentioning that this game also has some great voice acting. The voice acting parts are very selective and it doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes, but when it happens it's usually very good, especially for 2003 standards.
Salutations and greetings to you. I am Melpomene's confidant and Thalia's clown, a playwright poor in coin but rich in talent. I have a moment if you wish to speak.
Exploring Barcelona felt great and I had a lot of fun in the early game. To put it simply, the early game has everything I like to see in my RPGs. An interesting hook for the story, plenty of RPG options, interesting characters and multiple joinable factions.
You are most kind to say so.
And the freedom to explore the game before you choose to make your next move. Everything except a great combat system. Action combat in this game is very janky and it leaves a lot to be desired. It's not horrible and I got used to it very fast, and I was totally ready to look past its shortcomings if the game continues to be amazing like it was in the beginning. Surely it's going to continue being amazing. Surely.
I will not be made a fool of again.
Moving around in this game is very clumsy and slow. The default moving speed is just very slow, which quickly becomes a problem. It didn't bother me that much when I first got to explore some new areas. But when you constantly go back to areas that you previously discovered, it becomes a much more annoying problem. You will find some teleportation stones, which makes the traveling a bit less annoying, but it's not exactly fixing the issue. The combat feels very janky as well. Clicking on something specific can be a pain in the ass, because the game can be really imprecise. The feedback in combat is almost non-existing, which makes the already underwhelming action even more underwhelming. The combat uses dice rolls to determine the damage you're going to deal, along with other RPG stats and skills. I was playing a predetermined two-handed melee character, but you can also make a completely custom build. The character selection has some very decent depth to it, but the progression itself ends up being very disappointing. I was expecting to learn some new melee skills or make a unique build, but the skill tree for this is bare bones. You can only increase the passive skill level of weapon types, which is useful but very boring. Like many other features in the game, the progression feels very undercooked. It's not like the progression completely lacks active abilities that you can use in and out of combat. There are just few and far between, and mostly some utility spells or buffs. You start the game with a spell from the spirit kind, the spirit that possesses your character from the very beginning. This was actually a very useful spell, because it allowed me to heal a little bit by absorbing dead bodies. I also had a fear spell that I rarely used, along with some useful buffs. Other than that, I was just bonking people with my big sword. I did like the itemization system and the visual progression. However, my combat experience was really bad in the beginning, especially because I was forced to use one-handed weapons. I invested a lot of points into two-handed skill, only to find a two-handed weapon a couple of hours after I started playing. I would just miss a lot of hits and die in combat, a lot, because my one-handed skill was very low. It made this underwhelming combat even worse, but once I got my first two-handed weapon, the combat experience became a little bit better. Still not very good though, because the fundamentals of this combat system are pretty weak. And we came to the biggest problem with the game. Even though Lionheart started almost perfectly, it ends up hyper-focusing on its weakest feature, which will be the combat. The early and part of the mid-game felt perfectly fine, because there was a great balance between the story, RPG features, exploration and combat. The game seemed to have everything. But the second part of the game almost completely focuses on combat, and it throws a lot of enemies at you all the time. Those RPG features that I praised before are almost completely absent in the second part of the game. And the combat itself is not nearly good enough to carry the weight of the whole game. It's a shame, because this RPG could have been remembered as other great ARPGs like Diablo, Divine Divinity, Sacred, and similar titles.
You are most kind to say so.
Sadly, it feels very unfinished, which is probably the main reason it got forgotten nowadays. Number 2. Demon Stone.
The gem is to the east. Follow me.
Stay alert. There could be more of those things.
Demon Stone is a game that I covered with a 20-minute dedicated video back in May. I never covered this game in this series, and I know a lot of people will miss it because of that, so I wanted to include the shorter version here. The Forgotten Realms Demon Stone is an action role-playing game which played really similar to PlayStation 2 Lord of the Rings games. And for a good reason, it's developed by the same studio and in the same game engine. The game engine had a lot of improvements, especially when it comes to the visuals, but the gameplay felt very similar to Two Towers. I've beat this game not so long ago, and we're going to talk about all major features and about my experience with Demon Stone in general. This game came out on PlayStation 2, Xbox and PC, and you can get it on GOG nowadays. The reason why I didn't play the GOG version is because I just couldn't get my controller to work properly. Mouse and keyboard controls for the game are not very good to say the least, so I decided to stick with the emulated PS2 version. Even though the visuals of this game are noticeably outdated, Demon's Stone has a timeless artistic style which actually blew me away more than a couple of times. There are a lot of impressive scenarios that you're going to see on pretty much all levels. The distant terrain and the background of these levels are usually very busy. Some levels have an impressive amount of NPCs on the screen at once. I think Demon's Stone still looks great despite the poor visual fidelity, and this is just another example of why the artistic style is way more important. Visual variety is very strong as well, and all levels from chapter 1 to chapter 10 have a unique look. I would say that even the character models look great for a 2004 game. Demon's Stone is just pure action with little to no downtime in between. Stormfront Studios has been very creative with the set pieces in the game, and you'll get to experience a lot of them during your playthrough. The visual progression of your 3 characters is pretty good as well. You can buy different looking armor sets and some weapons for all of your characters between the chapters.
Now what do we do?
Now let's talk about the story and the gameplay. The game begins in the middle of a huge battle between 2 orcs' army. These intro scenes are really reminiscent of those beginning segments in Two Towers and Return of the King games. You start playing as a human warrior called Renek, and after about 5 minutes you meet other 2 protagonists called Jai and Ilius. Jai is a rogue and Ilius is the mage, and you're able to switch between these characters in 90% of situations. Shortly after the beginning of the game, your party accidentally released the warlords Yegori and Sireka from their imprisonment in a Demon's Stone. So your ultimate goal is to stop these warlords and imprison them again. You're only going to meet a handful of friendly characters during your playthrough, and one of them is a well-known face in Dungeons & Dragons universe.
This charm was forged by the Wood Elves of the High Forest, your cousins.
Drizzt Do'Urden is not only a story character in this game, he's also a playable character as well, at least for some time. The story itself in Demon's Stone is just not very good, but like I said before, the presentation is top notch, so it makes it up for the lackluster story, in a way. There is a decent amount of cutscenes on each level, and I found them very enjoyable, but not because of the story itself. The dialogue was okay, and even the voice acting is pretty good.
Gaul must have marked its walls. He found a way to reach out with his mind and draw you 3 to him.
My father was right. No good came of me.
Ilias, you're still a knight of Silvery Moon, and now you have a dire task to perform.
Although that shouldn't come as a big surprise, because this game has an elite cast of voice actors like Patrick Stewart, Michael Clark Duncan, Dan Riordan, Vanessa Marshall, and so on. So Demon's Stone had everything it needs for a great story, except the story itself.
Agreed.
This game really lacks an interesting overarching plot. I mean, it's not bad when you have such simple premise for the main story. It's actually desirable in most cases because the best stories are usually very simple. Now let's talk about the gameplay.
Get the archers!
Like I already mentioned, you play the game with 3 different characters. It's like a party-based RPG in a way, and you have a warrior, a mage, and a rogue. The action gameplay is more like a hack and slash than anything else. It's a bit spammy for sure, and your thumb is probably going to hurt a little bit after you finish this game. At first, the combat didn't seem all that good, but it gets better and better the more you play. That's because you start unlocking more combat moves and abilities for all characters, and the enemies get a bit smarter and start using more moves in combat. However, you can almost always rely on the brainless 1-2-3 simple combo, especially with the warrior. Somewhere near the late game, enemy NPCs won't allow you to spam your attacks just like that. You'll have to block some of them or move out of the way, because block doesn't work against everything. Well, not with the warrior and the rogue at least. Ilius, the mage, has the strongest spell block, which can pretty much block everything, even the boss spells. His attacking spell is also very strong, and you're going to use him a lot, especially against bosses. Speaking of mechanics I used a lot, I used the repost mechanic quite a bit with the warrior. When you block, you can press the attack right after, and he will do a pretty strong attack. Or when you're stunned on the ground, you can quickly recover with a basic attack, but all of this has to be unlocked first. It's very easy to level up and get those abilities, because you only need the points from leveling up, and you'll have plenty of them as long as you progress. You'll unlock more skills and powerful versions of the same skill when you reach a higher level. You'll need gold for buying some of the gear for all 3 characters. Again, very easy to do as long as you progress into the game. The RPG elements of this game are very basic, but they certainly add to the overall experience. I would rather have the basic RPG systems than not having them at all. All of these characters have unique moves and abilities, but they essentially play the same on the most fundamental gameplay level. You have a simple combo system for your attacks, and all 3 characters share some of the combat moves. But you also have a very decent amount of different moves to learn as you level up, and some exclusive abilities for all characters. After about a couple of chapters, all 3 characters get some unique moves. For example, Renek has a ground slam which will shatter some objects, and Jai can jump. Yeah, jumping is an exclusive ability that only the rogue can do. Look, this game simply doesn't give a shit about telling you anything. For example, in order to finish off this dragon, you have to subdue him with a mage, hit his head with a warrior, and then do a jumping attack with a rogue. I mean, that's fine, I don't have a problem with that. I just don't think these special powers are utilized enough in the game. Putting that aside, the new combos and abilities you can learn while leveling up can be fun to use. It's cool to see it every once in a while, but like I said before, using the most basic brain-dead combo is usually the most effective move. The stealth from Jai is very good because she can execute enemies as long as she attacks them from behind. And you can kinda abuse this mechanic from time to time, but it doesn't feel cheap. The AI characters are pretty damn smart, and it takes a lot for them to die on their own. They will just relentlessly defend when their health is low, and they will try to heal when possible. I think the balancing is very well done in general, except a couple of extremely frustrating objectives. The boss fights are well done, and I did enjoy all of them. They start off very simple with just a few mechanics, and they never get overly complicated. But the bosses have a decent amount of moves, or even a couple of phases for some bosses. For example, the dragon fight has 2 entirely different phases. When he flies around you, you have to hit him with ranged spells, and when he's on the ground, chasing you through a narrow hallway, which was a bit more scripted scenario. What I didn't even mention yet is the ultimate skills and the party synergy. All 3 characters have special bars that can fill up, and very powerful attack they can perform when the bar is filled. Although these attacks are useless against bosses, but they will wipe the floor with regular enemies on the map. Ultimately, I think Demon's Stone has a great hack and slash action gameplay. I'm really glad I decided to try this game out, and I would heavily recommend it, especially if you love those old Lord of the Rings games like Two Towers and Return of the King.
You're still a knight of Silvery Moon, and now you have a dire task to perform.
Number 1. Folklore. Folklore was a PlayStation 3 exclusive, which came out in 2007. It's described as an action role-playing video game, but I would say it's actually a blend of at least a couple of different genres. The story is told with stylized, interactive dialogue menus, small and big cutscenes. I don't play visual novel games, but if I would have to guess how these games present their stories, it would be something like this. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Of course not!
Anyway, Folklore has to be one of the most bizarre games that I ever played. Bizarre in the best way possible, I mean, not bizarre for the sake of being bizarre. I was not expecting much from this game before I started playing because it didn't seem like something I would enjoy. Well, the game proved me wrong, because it's a very high quality title in general. As for the game itself, the story follows 2 main characters, a young journalist named Keats and a young woman named Ellen. You can choose to play as one of these characters and push the story forward. But both characters have their own role to play in the main story, and they will interact with each other. They also have different paths in the story, and ultimately, you'll have to push the story forward with both characters in order to understand the murder mystery in the village. Yeah, that's the main theme of the story. There was a murder in the village called Dolin, and you have to solve the mystery behind the murder. That includes doing some detective work during the day in the village and fighting weird monsters at night. I started playing the game as the journalist kids, and I just scratched the surface of the Ellen story arc. I really didn't expect to like this story that much, or the game to be honest, but I ended up loving the game in general. You will interact with some very bizarre characters in order to solve this murder case. The writing is very clever and interesting, although there is no voice acting in dialogue, so you'll have to do some reading. Not a ton of reading, I guess, because these dialogue interactions are not very long. The game has a bunch of little cutscenes which are fully voice acted, and they make the story a lot more engaging and interesting.
But what powers can she possibly have to cause disaster there? She only went to search for her mother.
The portal to the netherworld lies beyond here.
All of a sudden, the simple journalist becomes a detective who is trying to solve this complicated murder case. During the day, you will explore the village of Dolling, ask around about your current quest and try to get more information from NPCs. There is something different going on each time you visit the village again. For example, a new NPC will show up and talk with you, you will unlock a certain part of the map that you couldn't access before, and so on. During this part of the gameplay, you're not able to engage in combat with anyone. Shortly after you start the game, you will discover the realm of the dead called the Netherworld. The Netherworld is filled with various hostile creatures, and this is where the game introduces its combat mechanics, which are quite unique. Every time you kill a new type of a creature, you'll get to use their special powers. I guess we can make some comparison with Pokemon games, since you're capturing different monsters and using their abilities in combat. It's like Pokemon, but in a more bizarre way, and instead of tactical turn-based combat, Folklore has an action combat system. This combat system is entirely based around the powers you collect from these creatures. Both main characters have a distinctive playstyle. Kids can also turn into a much powerful version of himself, which allows you to deal a lot more damage with all abilities. At first, the enemies you get to fight are brain dead and very easy, but it gets more challenging the more you progress. You will also fight bosses with special mechanics. Before you can get these unique abilities from enemies, or folk creatures as the game calls them, you have to use a special mechanic to absorb the souls. You have to press R1 when they turn red, and you also have to jerk your controller upwards. Yeah, this game uses 6-axis motion on the controller, not only in these particular gameplay moments. I played the game with my DualSense PS5 controller, and this mechanic works almost flawlessly. However, it gets a bit boring to do it over and over again, because you're going to kill a lot of enemies. Luckily, the game allows you to absorb multiple souls at once if you deal enough damage to them. Stronger enemies and bosses will push this even further, and you sometimes need to shake your controller or do the same jerking motion with precise timing. All of these motion mechanics work great, and I found them interesting in general. They blend with the regular gameplay quite well. When in combat, you can only use 4 different abilities at the same time. But you can always enter the ability menu and switch up your abilities however you want, even in the middle of the combats. Enemies will have resistances to certain types of abilities. This will force you to switch up your abilities on a regular basis. It's pretty fun because you won't have to play for long to learn a lot of new abilities and fight various types of enemies. Even some destructible items on these maps can only be broken with certain abilities. There are defensive abilities that you'll get from some enemies which are pretty much essential for not dying in a fight. You also get a simple dodge mechanic as well. These abilities can be ranged or melee, and they can have big AoEs or focus more on single target damage and so on. You can only use a certain amount of abilities until your mana bar drains, but it will regenerate very fast after only a few seconds. It's not called a mana bar, but that's essentially what it is. I forgot the name. I think this game balances out the action and the story segments quite well. It keeps the combat from being repetitive and slightly annoying with those motion mechanics. On the other side, the story keeps you engaged because it's pretty good in general, and you want to learn what's going to happen next, at least I did. Combined with the unconventional presentation and interactive cutscenes, Folklore managed to offer a truly unique experience. I would highly recommend trying this game out, even if you think it's not your type of a game, like I did.
The spirits led me here, to the netherworld. An ancient tale of a voyage to the netherworld.
And that would be it for this video.
Game saved.
You can keep suggesting games in the comments down below, although my list is already too big, but I keep adding more titles to cover. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.